Eritrea YouTube channel and Nafasi Post newsletter. This is part 2 of a 2-part interview with Mulugheta Abraham and the Eriam Sisters, Leanda, Salina, and Haben, about the book Mulugheta Abraham wrote, The 11-Year-Old Man, an incredible book. The links are below so you can get it. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share, follow Eritrea YouTube channel, and make sure to subscribe NafasiPost.com newsletter. It is crucial that we do. You talk about your inspirations, how the lack of education may have helped you, but what I have noticed, throughout, the book is the role that your dad played in choosing your profession. Correct. Can you talk a little bit about that? And along with that, what it was like to actually go through the process of the education, and when you finally graduated, how your life was being immersed to the lives of the Eritreans in Europe. If you can just bring that all together, that would be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. My dad had a big role to play in who I am today, for sure, no question about that. And the reason is, although I wanted to be educated and all of that, the direction that I chose for myself, starting from Sudan, was music. So for me, it was like, I want to be a musician and a professional musician, not just like play music and all that, but I want to be a teacher. So that was my dream. The moment I came to Holland and I made a plan for that and sent it to my dad, it was immediately rejected. He's like, no. Let's get it right. What you need to do is, here are the 3 professions that you need to consider. One is in priority order. He said the first one is aerospace engineering. Second one is electrical engineering. Third one is mechanical engineering. Those are the 3 things that you have to do, nothing else. And for me, again, given that I had tremendous respect for my dad, I didn't even flinch. I said, okay, my dad says aerospace engineering, that's what it will be. So my plan shifted from being a musician or wanting to be a musician to aerospace engineering. Mind you, I have no feeling for airplanes, no love for aerospace whatsoever. It's just like, okay, if you say so, that I'm going to make it happen. And that was the plan. And the plan worked out extremely well. Again, it all goes back to the motivation and the effort that he put on it. But it worked out really well. So the struggle, of course, is, you're starting from scratch. You're starting from learning the language first. The entire education system in Holland is all in Dutch. There is no English, correct? So even if it was English was not a language that I spoke anyway. So it was really learning the language and then attending the school, which is high school in this case, and then eventually trying to make it to college. So it's a massive mountain to climb. And, I did find some shortcuts, which was incredible now I think about it. But there were some shortcuts and an incredible luck. At the same time, also just hard to believe hard work. It was, my life was consumed with just work, study. That's it. There was nothing else. There was no going out. There was no having fun. It was all about just making sure that the target gets hit. And that kind of focus, is can only be achieved, I think, if you have been almost trained to be a military, because they train you, they drill you, and that may have helped in my case. But yes, definitely the school part was a very interesting story that I write about, how I joined high school and how I had no chance whatsoever. Even, by the way, even back in Asmara, there is a certificate here. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I have it here. This certificate here was really issued by an Ethiopian teacher. And he basically said, this kid has no hope because he failed math and science. And how do you write something like that on a certificate? I don't know, but he wrote it. And so if you go by that, there was no chance. But if there is anything that I proved wrong is, hey, sometimes you don't have to be smart. You just have to be really hardworking. And other times you have to be smart and not hardworking. So I guess it depends how you look at it. But it worked out well, the education part in Holland. As I said, luck is also important. You have to be at the right time, at the right place. So I was lucky enough to have the support that I got, the friends that I've had, the people that I met, the love of my life. I'm sure there's a big part of it in the book, which in some cases maybe distraction, in other cases support. So there is a lot that I had to overcome to become an engineer in Holland, for sure. But once you pass that, and the moment comes, you're actually really now graduating, and it happened to be at the time that Eritrea becomes independent, which is 1991. The joy is just an incredible thing, because it is almost like, wow, what an incredible story where Eritrea is becoming independent. I get to graduate at that year, and there are some other things in the book that I write about, how everything coincides and becomes this magical 1991.
That's really amazing. It's kind of, I think there's a lot of discipline that you exhibit. I think that had an impact on your life, and that discipline kind of led to you successfully educating yourself and graduating as fast as you did by manipulating the process, or however you overcame all the different restrictions that they have, and also talking about your love story, your trips to Bologna, Italy, and if you can touch upon that a little bit.
Yeah, part of the living experience in Europe, of course, is Bologna. Bologna is I think for every Eritrean that lived in Europe, it was the highlight of our life. Every year we wait for it. And in Holland, there was an interesting thing, actually. Holland is such an interesting country. For every summer, they actually give you money so you can go on vacation. So that's called actually vacation money. So they think like it is good for your health to go on vacation. So we definitely waited for that moment, because we're going to get our vacation money and then head to Bologna. And that's where we get pretty much our energy for the next year, because then you feel the excitement, you feel the belongingness, you feel like you're not alone. You actually have a population of people that belong to you, and you have a common goal. You exercise your culture. It is just an amazing experience that you experience in Bologna. I'm saying this for my kids because every Eritrean knows it. But for me, again, notice, I come from the ELF background, so Bologna was quite a resistance for me to get there. But eventually I got there, and I couldn't have it any better. I enjoyed it. It was, as I said, a dose of encouragement and energy to get you going. In the meantime, I fell in love with my wife, my now wife, Tiblets, and quite an interesting love story there. This was it could have been a book on its own, especially if they would allow me to be open, a little bit more open than what I have been. But definitely, I have experienced an incredible love story, along with the education that I have been pursuing. That's why I was calling 1991 was an amazing year, and that's where my love story got also a dose of good news, in a sense. So without divulging too much of the details.
It is really amazing, destiny, how things worked out, and Leanda and Selena were born in Holland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And tell us about it, please.
So again, the love story itself is a very interesting story, and I get emotional. In fact, there are certain paragraphs I wrote about that part of my life where I get really, really emotional. That was your first experience, your first love of your life, and to have gone through what I've gone through in that time, you cannot help but be emotional. So those of you who love to read love stories, I think there is something in there for you guys. But for me, it ultimately culminated in the birth of my oldest daughter, Leanda. Leanda is a gift in many ways, and I write about it in that book without any reservation, how she got born and the reason she's here in this world. And that makes her a very special person for me and for her mom as well. Um, yeah, Selena joined a year and a half later, and Selena kind of is a special person as well, but not in the way she came. The way she came, it was pretty a little too early. She was born almost on the highway. But we had them in Amsterdam. Both of them were born in Amsterdam, and then very soon after a couple of years, I think 2 years, you were Selena. I used to work after graduation. I used to work for a Fokker aircraft company. That company went bankrupt, and by then we had two kids, bought a home, established a life that was middle class in Holland. That was almost unheard of for us as Eritreans.
Yeah, that was really surprising. And you seem like you kind of got enmeshed into the society, became a part of the middle class society in Holland.
Yeah.
And that was not typical for the lives of the Eritreans there.
Not in 1990 and 89. That was unheard of. We were probably very few of us, that went through that. Later on, of course, things changed and everybody joined. But, for us, we were one of the first few that went through that process and managed to break through and have a life that was, considered to be middle class and enviable even by the locals, correct? So I was lucky enough to have experienced that, and there were, of course, other many Eritreans as well. But as I said, it was not a very common thing. But then, the company went bankrupt, and eventually Boeing arrived in Seattle, in Amsterdam, and said, "Well, guys, hey, about 15,000 people got laid off, and about 3,000 were engineers. So they wanted to make sure that those 3,000 engineers somehow get to the US and use their skills." So they went and offered us a job, and that's how we ended up in Holland as a family. Again, a long story, a decision that was not easy to make, because we had to start from scratch as new immigrants again. And my wife had a great job in Amsterdam, and she had to stop and quit job and come here. So not an easy decision. But again, that's where my father also have a big say in that, correct? So every person in the family was saying, "No, hell no, you're not going to America. You crazy. That country is not a place you go to after you reach Europe. That country is meant for people who go to Sudan. Once you're in Europe, why would you go there?" But my dad sent basically saying, "No, no, 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 no. If you get a chance to go to America, that's where you need to go." And his justification was, the people that we see in Eritrea are investing and making big difference are people who come from Europe, from America. So you should join them. It's like, okay, that's the decision done. From my side at least, we had to compromise with my wife and the family, but eventually we found a middle ground and managed to move to the US. Not an easy decision, but that's when Haben joined us.
Fabian was born as soon as he came to the United States.
Haben was in the inception was in Amsterdam, but
we can say it the right way.
You kind of, all right. She was born when, as soon as you came here, about what, 2-3 years?
No. Just I think it was months, not even a year, less than a year after we arrived. She was born.
So the Eriam Sisters were born.
Haben is the one that proved Eriam Sisters.
You almost.
We can say haven't.
Haven't. Thank you.
Oh, what was I saying?
Yeah, we're so used to doing this.
Yeah. So. No, that's good. So the Arium Sisters were born. You guys get adjusted to the United States, and now you guys are acculturated to the United States. And how was life playing out for you guys? And what was it like for all of you?
What a throwback. I mean, it's tough for me to think that far back, but I'll say I do recall, as far as like adjusting to a new culture goes, I do remember feeling that even then, being in classes and trying so desperately to get rid of my accent, because at that point Dutch was our first language. At home we were learning Tigrinya, and then we arrive in America and everyone's speaking English, and at that point there were a couple of different accents thrown in there when we were trying to say something. So I do remember that being difficult, but for the most part we had a very happy childhood filled with lots of music, lots of love, and even playing back family videos now, all of these years later, that's really all we saw was three kids, two parents watching their children dancing to Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? We looked crazy while we were doing it, but we just were having the time of our lives. And I think that's still something that we do all of these years later.
For sure.
Music and all of that it plays such a huge part of our lives. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I could add, I feel like there's this element of us also being adopted by our new family, our new Eritrean community in Seattle, because most of our family, in terms of our cousins, they were all in Holland, in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands or in Europe, but we didn't have any, and we haven't had any for a really long time. But we got our adopted family. So it was amazing to see, both when we were younger, just getting accepted by the Eritrean community here, and to have another home away from home, and sisterhoods that we've built that now have lasted our entire lives since we've come here. That's just been so beautiful to have in our lives as well.
So how did that Arium transition came about?
Well, we started, we were a part of the Eritrean dance group in Seattle. And that's where I guess we had our first opportunities to sing together, because we always sang together at home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a talent show that went on. And
it was at the Eritrean Festival in Seattle. I think it was at the Convention Center.
Mm-hmm.
And Sunnight Habte was actually the person and she led the Eritrean dance group. She was the person who was like, you guys need to sign up. You guys are going to perform. And she just spoke so much life into us throughout that entire experience, and really pushed us to take that leap, I guess, and see what we could do. And I remember the day of our first performance together, when we did do that talent show, and the amount of love that we received. Everyone came to the front of the stage, and mind you, we didn't have any, choreography.
It wasn't great.
It was just three Habesha girls singing there, doing the best that we could. And
we were trying to pretend we were the Cheetah Girls.
Yes.
It was a karaoke show, really. This is what it was.
No. I mean, you guys sang Haile Gabru and things like that, and it was really natural for you guys to sing that. I remember that very well. So, how did your dad's role play in that?
Oh my God, where do we begin?
Big role. First, he taught us all of the songs. He helped us musically with it. I think you got to have some fun too, because you used to be in the band. So I think we brought that side out of you again. But a lot of the songs I think we had grown up listening to, and some of them were fresh, and we went through all the lyrics together to really learn.
And if you're asking, what the role that our dad played in, especially with Arium in general, there are so many. So I truly don't even know where to begin. The name being just the first example. Arium was the name that which stands for Eritrean American. That was entirely his idea. Even incorporating a lot of the Tigrinya songs into our shows, he created a lot of those tracks, created a lot of those songs, and worked with us to make sure that it sounded, spot on. He was really our coach in a lot of ways. So, and then just the person to introduce us to music, him and my mom. It was not something that when we wanted to pursue it was, they didn't try to tell us to be realistic or, focus only on your career. It was, of course, 100% focus on on school, getting your education, but that in no way prevents you from enjoying and indulging in something that you love and gives you energy too. So
No, it's actually
Yeah, I
very
think-
fast. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think about this a lot when I read the book, and you see that, you know, our grandfather gave our dad clear instructions of, you know, be a engineer, and there's 3 options within engineer, and the freedom I think that we were afforded by our parents to say, you know, if music is something you want to pursue, then you know, pursue it. Don't let that stop your education, but I'm going to support you. And it was really, music is what brought our family together. It's how we show love and connect and have fun and dance together and create together. So I think it was such a blessing for us to have that freedom, to be able to pursue it, not just as, you know, a hobby, but to be able to pursue it professionally and have our parents support us in that. And I think it is part of, I hope, the dream of, you know, offering more and more opportunity to each generation that comes.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually fascinating, but I don't want it to divert too far away from the book, you know, to talk about the Eriam Sisters. But what I want to bring is, how did that energy relate to your connection with your dad and to your partnership? Because you have a working relationship in the process of doing that. Would you characterize it as that?
absolutely. I think, you know, if I think about our dinner table, that's really where a lot of the conversations relating to, well, all of the conversations that we have dinner as a family together every night. It was not, you know, we can't have our own meals. That's not how it was. It was very much, this is our time to come together and just be in community, you know? So I think something that our dad, you know, going off of what Selena just said about affording or giving us that freedom to kind of create and all of that. We also had the freedom to make our own decisions. We were very much equal partners in at least as far as the music side goes. We were able to share our ideas, speak our piece. It'll be truly considered, and it was really kind of like a majority rules kind of thing. So it was, our dad, I feel like, was very, very strict when it came to raising his kids. But as far as the music side of it goes, he really did give us that freedom to take it really wherever we wanted. So.
And in cases when we didn't have it, we demanded it. So it was a fiery dinner table.
I just wanted to be as democratic as your dad, just to make sure that you have a say as well. So,
Well, you know what it means, though. You know, so if it is democratic, that means the 3 girls are going to be winning all the time. Right?
Majority rule.
I think the book. How long did the book take to write, and what was your role in it, if you had any?
So for us, it would.
That's questions for us, correct?
Yeah, you're.
Okay, from my experience, I don't think we learned about it until maybe you were a few years in already. Maybe you had talked about just documenting some of your stories a little bit, but I don't think we really understood that it was becoming a full story of you until a few years in, and you actually shared a bit of your Word document with me. And I started reading the beginning, and it was, I think, immediately obvious that it had to be bigger. I think because it's so personal to us also, it feels, reading it, like we become closer to you. Because we can see you as a whole, it sounds crazy, but as a kid, I think with your parents, it's hard to view them as the same type of person almost. Like there's almost a wall there, I think, between generations. And I always felt like reading even bits of the book or any part humanized you in a different way. Yeah, it just felt really personal.
In other words, you got to know him as a person
Yeah.
differently than the parent.
As a child, as a teenager, as my age, and beyond it.
It
Yeah.
humanized him for you.
For sure.
I think, at least, and I may be projecting here, but I think like my understanding without really knowing it, it feels like your parents' life begins when you get there, basically. You know what I mean? So just being able to hear the details, you really feel like, at least reading the book, I felt like I was transported and I was him,
Yeah.
almost, you know? And I felt like I felt everything you were saying, the rebellious nature, all of that. It was like so fun to watch, and I felt like I was watching it.
It also makes sense into the human that we know you
Right.
as. It explains so much. So we had fun.
Were you immersed in the process? So did you have a role in editing, and just did you have any input?
Yeah, so I think we all definitely had a hand in editing.
We did,
But
it was a long
it was
process.
always it was
It was a lot of words.
So you were editing. You were actually taking out a lot of stuff.
We were assigned pages, right? So like we just kind of took our pages and dove in, and there were different stages within the editing process too. First, it's kind of like supporting with the content. Then it's really like more copy editing, So yeah, we were involved in a lot of it, the editing piece of it.
Did you ever get a
And
chance?
I just think an important part of this book is that it was written as a reflection, at 40,000 feet while he was on the airplane on his business trips. And so when we got pulled in, it was the compilation of all these thoughts from different, flights.
Yeah.
And moving from that, which was a beautiful gift for us as children to, well, maybe not children, but as daughters, to be able to receive that, to see all the kind of the intimate details of life, to then think about, okay, well, what do you want to share with the world? What is relevant, and how do we share those, the most exciting parts of the story? So the transition of it going from kind of really a long diary to a book to offer was an interesting one and a fun one for us to play a very small role in, because to be honest,
I think his role is quite obvious. But just two things: did you get a chance to read it after it was finished, to separate yourself from everything from the process and actually become an audience and read it? Did you get a chance to do that? And secondly, that's like kind of. You have not read it.
When you say it like that, I think it feels
okay. So now, but the second question is: would you consider this a memoir or an autobiography? Since you guys had a part of it, what would you consider it to be?
I think an autobiography, because it was so, in its rawest state, it was great. There was so much imagery, and like, I honestly always feel like we did very little in the process. It was beautiful always. So yeah, I think maybe we'd like cut things down and like changed a couple words, but yeah, I would say this was, we had great discussions about it, but this is, I think, your baby for sure.
Yeah, but I think, to be fair, though, I mean, as I told you, Aman, the book was written with them in mind, correct? The family in mind initially. So it was an open book, meaning, whatever I had in my mind was written there. So it couldn't go out as is publicly, because it was just too much involvement of the other side, not just me. As far as I'm concerned, I was okay, but for my wife, for the kids to look at us, they're okay. This is very personal, so we can't take this out. Especially on Tiblet's side, there was some resentment to say, okay, hey, we're writing this with Eritrean culture in mind. Therefore, if you consider that, then you should take this out. But for me, if I consider that, I shouldn't write a book altogether. This is,
I think what's interesting about this to me is, this is the behind the scene. The people would have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, but to have a family that's engaged in a process is really an amazing thing. And, it's an example, it's a model, and it's also very inspirational. But, nobody would know reading the book that this kind of exchange went on. You can tell the story, but the book is so fluid, so smooth. It takes you from one stage to the next. So written extremely well, and you can tell that a lot of thought and a lot of time went on to the process. And I'm so glad that it came out the way that it did. And I think it's for me, I reviewed it as a memoir because it talks about certain events, and there are periods in your life that it doesn't cover. So and the historical perspectives that you give, whether it is during the ELF or even when you went to Bologna. And I think one of the stories that I would like you to maybe touch upon is 1991 when you went to Eritrea for the first time. And you said that you used to be scared to go look at some of the barracks that the Ethiopian soldiers were. And, I would like to pick on your mindset. What was it like for you to go back there? Was it a sense of victory, or was that kind of...
That's a very interesting question, Ahmad. I think you, at that point...
Especially the fact that you were a soldier fighting them. So that really is...
One thing, and I may have written about this, one thing that struck me was I went to the tank cemetery. And at that point, the tank cemetery was literally fresh. That means all the bullets and everything was there. Okay, so everything is live ammunition there, and it was not cleaned up. So I went there and actually went into the turret of the tank itself inside, and looked at the binoculars that they use. And I'm thinking, like, what the heck? These guys had this kind of machines that puts the enemy right in front of you just like that, because we had nothing, correct? We just see a tank way from a distance, but from that tank perspective, they look at you like you're just right there. So for me, that was the first thing I thought, my goodness, this is an incredibly powerful machine that, that we didn't have. Eventually we had it, of course, with EPLF and all that, but back in the days, we just had an AK-47, an RPG, and maybe a Droshka. I know that's about it. So those kind of things come to your mind, just the military aspect of it. The emotional side of it is, you look at the utensils in the tank, you look at the hat that they wore, and then you realize these are individuals that were sitting in this thing, and they didn't make it. Then on the other side is you when you arrive at the airport, just the sheer emotion you get just by smelling the air. And I maybe hard to understand this, but for me, just like the moment you get out of the airplane, that smell is so distinct. Asmara smell is incredible. And then you get to your mom, and then again, that smell of your mom is there. So there are some emotional moments that struck you really, but overall you get overwhelmed. You get overwhelmed in a bad and good way. In a bad way because Asmara that is no longer Asmara. The lights are so flickering and it's all dark. The taxis are ruined. So all of that just goes, wow, what happened? Asmara is not what I know. But on the other hand, you also have this emotional feeling that, wow, I can't believe we as people actually made it in a way that didn't replicate what happened to Massawa. Asmara was intact in a way, relatively speaking. And how did we make that happen? And an incredible appreciation and kudos goes to EPLF and their strategy. This is an incredible thing that happened in Asmara. So all of that, you kind of process it. But the majority of it, what struck me was just like how small everything was. For me as a little kid, everything was so far away. And you go there as an adult, everything is so small, so close to each other. So those are moments that I remember. But if I may, going back to the girls, I want to give them credit for what they have done in the book. If I may, Ahmad.
Please.
The book was a creation of me because I wrote it in the airplane and the story, the content, all of that. But the kids actually played a big role in terms of editing it, in terms of content sequencing in some case, and also to a certain extent highlighting what makes sense, correct? What is, because it has an audience, what do the people that read this take out of this chapter? So there was a lot of discussions, and not to forget the artwork. We had a lot of artwork designed, and Ami spent Haben, and we call her Ami, spent a lot of time to come up with different ideas. And so it was a creation process as well, which I genuinely enjoyed as a family. And I have to say the book itself, all the way to its printing, was the creation of the family, which was a beautiful thing. Even the editing of it, even the formatting, everything was done here in this house. So I'm very proud of the girls' contribution, and my wife did contribute in a way that made the book reasonable, because if it may have not gone out as is, it could have been a different reaction maybe from some people. So it's good for Mama also to say, well, let's put some reasonableness here. You can't just be an open book. Yeah, it is an open book, but it shouldn't be that open.
So that that is interesting. But to go back to the Asmara situation, to the Asmara experience, you ended up taking your daughters to Eritrea a couple of times or 3 times, and just giving them a little bit of the experience, taking them back there. And I think that's very, very important, because it's given them an opportunity to see their families, to get connected with their families, to get in touch with who you were as a child growing up. And also, it is extremely important for them to become a part of the Eritrean way of life, to understand what was going on there, and how that may have impacted them, the role that it played. I would like you guys to touch upon that, if you may.
It's all inside of you.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I of course saw the identity issue as a big issue here in the country, correct? Especially as they grew up. So it was very fundamental for us to say, okay, hey, what is your identity? You can't be generic immigrant here, correct? So you have to have a hook to your who you are, and Eritrea was a big thing, So we raised them with that in mind, not an easy thing, like for any parent knows it. It's not an easy thing to do that. But we worked hard on that, and of course, the best thing to do is to take them to Eritrea and let them see it, and not too late, because if it is too late, then they get a shock effect, correct? So you have to do that early enough so that they can get adjusted to it. But the kids have gone to different places, not only to the Asmara, but they even went as far as really the village where my father was born, to see it, and they've seen how people live in the village. They have gone to Sawa, and in the process all the way to the road to Sawa. So all of that helps a lot. And in Salina specifically, I really want to mention this. She did her research work in Eritrea in the Bisha mining company. So she actually did some research in Mogorite, where I, as a prisoner guard, was stationed. So there is an interesting history in a sense that, she was there where I was there when I was a teenage, So, it is an incredible experience to have that as kids, I think, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that's coming to mind for me was that we were introduced to a home away from home, really. When I think about when we were 7, 9 years old, going to Eritrea for the first time, not really knowing what to expect, but getting there, and everyone from my grandmother to the staff at the airport look like me. They treat me like I'm their child, or like they're my mom, like they're my dad. They're protective, they're nurturing, and it's everywhere you go. The whole country is that way, you know? So as a kid, for me, that was huge in understanding, again, the connection to the identity piece, and also just I feel like in a way, because we also had family in the Netherlands and had that same sort of the love and the family there, I feel like we're in a way citizens of the, feel like we're citizens of the world, and don't feel like we're necessarily tied to, you know, this is my home. No, my home is wherever my people are, whether that's in Eritrea, whether that's in Holland, where most of our family is, or in the States where our immediate family is. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, I think you guys were also exposed to the reality back home, correct? In terms of, you know, the going to the orphanage and actually really connecting to the orphans and making sure that they were supported. You guys were working on, you know, a project. What we used to call it? Forgot what.
Yeah. So my senior project in high school, I basically did a donation drive at my school for a couple of weeks, and all of the items that people donated, we were able to take back to the orphanage in Asmara. So, yeah, that definitely impacted us in a big way, for sure.
And the game that you were playing at festivals, what's that called?
Oh my gosh, you're right. Okay, there's so many things. Even we had every Independence Day, there's a celebration in Seattle, and we started this, I don't even know what you call it, like a group called EKK. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Daddy, called Eritrean Kids Kingdom, where we had a bunch of like games that you could play, and we had snacks that people could buy, and all of that money, then we gathered it and gave it back to the community. So yeah, there were really lots of great
This was during the war, right? When the war was happening.
Yep.
Around 98, you know, so this is what a lot of kids were doing in Washington, D.C. Some of them were doing car washes and things like that in churches. So, you know, that's kind of the story that we need to get out, that we don't really share as much, you know, the kind of role that the kids have played in order to get to where we are today. And so it's very interesting. Selena, did you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, I was getting emotional listening to Leanda talk. I don't know, for many reasons. I think it's been, on one hand, I feel like such an honor and a privilege to be part of our community, to have my heritage be such a strong element of who I am. I think we probably don't talk enough about the kind of parallel lives that we live, being outside of the country, but being so at the same time, you know, our hearts in many ways being at home. And it's a tough divide. And it's been interesting to see from my dad's side, from his own experience, what that's been like. But also for this generation, it's a very uniquely challenging experience. And so you spend a lot of time trying to bridge that gap, never feeling like you're doing enough, but at the same time having such a gratitude for our community, whether it's here, whether it's in you know, DC, wherever you go in the world, and if you go home to Asmara and Eritrea. Yeah, I feel so grateful that we were able to have that experience from kids now all the way to now, and hope that's something that we can continue to grow and focus on in our generation. It's important.
You know, I think things are changing drastically. Your dad probably tells you about what's taking place in terms of the geopolitical developments, and I think that's going to have an immediate impact on the lives of the people of Eritrea. The changes that we aspire to see for a long time is likely to happen. Hopefully, start happening soon. And so, really, I'm very excited about it. So, as we come near to the end of what we're doing, I think it's extremely important to talk about, you know, how the cultural differences or similarities or your experiences in the United States kind of shaped your belief system, and how did that interact with your parents that come from a totally different background? Was that easy to mesh, or did you guys have, you know, I wouldn't call it struggle, but you know, just going through the process?
This is an interesting one, and this one I'll hand to Leanda too, because I know we all had strong opinions at the dinner table. Leanda amongst the strongest. But I do think on the whole, Africans have a general problem with understanding the African American struggle and experience. And so we lived in that tension for a long time as well, coming here, realizing, okay, you're not African American, you're African. Then for a large part of our, childhood, trying to shed that identity, so we could fit into something that felt a little more normal. And then now in adulthood, recognizing the beauty and the complexity that exists in the solidarity amongst, the diaspora of Africa, which includes African Americans. And so, being in America is uniquely different too. There's so many racial elements, and I think we were fighting at the dinner table around police brutality, around disparities in education and poverty and health, all of these things that we were seeing. Why do we attend a Black student union? Why does there need to be a Black student union? And so these were all conversations we would really, really debate a lot with our parents, because that understanding, we were just at two different kind of sides of the world. Yeah, Leanda, I'm interested to hear your perspective, and then.
I mean, yeah, well, you said it so perfectly, and I mean, to kind of just add to that, I think the experience itself was not, as you can imagine, was not an easy one, right? Where you read through the book the experience that our dad had growing up, and then in coming to the States, and the expectations at home, the way you're raised at home, the culture that you experience at home is so different from when you step outside, right? So when you go to school, it's like you stepped into a whole new world. And I think we were very lucky that we had the space and opportunity to share our piece in our household. Our parents encouraged us to, even when they didn't want to hear it, they would hear our perspectives, and we would have those debates at home. So in that sense, I feel very, very blessed. And I think that's what's allowed us to get to a space now where, yes, there's still differences, but we can see and understand the other side. So grateful that we had that opportunity. And I think the biggest thing that I'm grateful for, and I think helped allow us to get to this space where we can understand each other a little bit better, was really just shedding the expectation that at least I had of my parents understanding out the gate what I mean when we have completely different lived experiences. How can I expect someone to see things from my lens and my perspective when they don't know the stories I'm thinking of, they don't know they might not know the information that they have, or so I think just kind of resetting the expectations when having these tough conversations made it a lot easier to have a healthy discussion about it, and to be it helped to also open your ears and open your mind to the other side as well. So I think that helped us get to understand each other a lot better. So.
Yeah. And I wonder if Ami wants to say a few things about this, but maybe before you say something, Ami, Haben. This is an area where I'm not sure if it is a typical thing for Habesha family to go through, but it was a very difficult thing for me personally, for our family, because we clearly didn't grow up here. I didn't even go to school here, so I have no understanding whatsoever what they go through at school. I had no understanding of the racial dynamics and the relationships and the history of Black Americans. We know there was slavery and all that, but in terms of the details, the systematic nature of it and all that was escaping me in many ways. And I write a lot about that in the book, because in many ways I felt, this is after the fact, of course, that I got educated by my kids instead of the other way around, where I was supposed to educate my kids on the social aspects of the U.S. But I was definitely not positioned or equipped to pass any knowledge in this area. So the only knowledge I had was the Eritrean knowledge that I come from, which is, if you work hard, you got to be able to make it. And, no matter what the excuse is, whether it is colonialism or slavery and all that, you got to shut it off and move on. If it takes you to move out of New York ghetto to be homeless in LA or start a fresh life in Seattle, why not do that? I mean, we're coming from Sudan to start fresh. So that mentality clashed directly with the mentality that the kids have, and not only the mentality, but also the reality in this country, correct? So from that perspective, I did learn a lot. Our family has gone through a lot of growing phase in that perspective, and each one of you have contributed in one way or another in making us sharper. But the reverse side is also true in a sense. We also have put a lot of context to this for them to see it from a slightly different angle. There are other solutions that could potentially be prescribed to do things differently in this country. And we're talking now about the U.S., of course, not Eritrea, but it affects us directly. And as kids, you are in this country, and we are all in this country, so we care about it, and we have to have solutions. But at the same time, also different. These are not easy solutions. If it was, we would have seen it, but it's not an easy thing, and it's good to have a common understanding happen.
No, honestly, you guys said a lot of it, so I'm not sure I have a lot to add, but I am extremely grateful for the openness that we have in our family. I feel like you, as our parents, taught us to have open minds and empathy, and that it's okay to be honest about our thoughts and our feelings, and it's okay to disagree. It feels like we've all been on a journey together to grow and get to know each other better, and grow as kids, of course. And then this book also was another level of us, I feel like, growing in our relationship to you and our view of you.
Yeah, I think, and I'll just add, I think that's kind of the common theme here is just like the open communication and the transparency that you see showing up in my daddy's book, also showed up in the real world. And that's what's allowed us to create a family dynamic where we are open and honest about even the hardest, most difficult topics. If it's true to you, I want to know what you think. Like, I want to know what you feel, even if we may not be on the same side. That's really the space that we've been able to create. And it was not an easy road. Let's make it very clear. It was not something that came naturally by any means. Like, we care so much about each other, but we're also so different, also so similar in some ways that makes it even harder to communicate. But the one thing we didn't do is we didn't give up. You know what I mean? You just keep trying, keep showing up for one another. Because it's family. Because it's your family. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that I liked about that exchange, not only the exchange that we just did right now, but the exchange in the book, I bring it up because it's in the book. You talk about it, and I think it is crucial for a lot of our families to be able to talk about the issues that you talked about in the manner that you talk about, because it is generational, and your parents, our generation, had to go through stages that you did not go through. And that is, first, you are, looking at the struggle of your father. They have to go through all these transitions, educate themselves, be a part of the Eritrean community, think about the struggle, support their families, raise a family, educate themselves. Not only educate themselves, but get acculturated to the cultures that they're in, and still part of the community, become part of the community, and help Eritrea. So there's just so many different things to juggle, while at the same time trying to be economically sustainable and bring the level of your standard. And Eritreans were able to do that. And you did it at a very, very high level. And many Eritreans have never faltered. We are the first generation Eritreans, and I think you guys would be the second generation, if I'm not mistaken. And you are reaping the benefits of it. we've never stopped. We've always been driven, showing you, like your father did, taking it to Eritrea. You lived a very high standard of living, compared, relatively speaking. And that is what we need to communicate about, see and share our lives with each other and the world. And I think it's a critical point, and that's the reason why I brought it up. And I'm so happy that you guys are able to share it in the manner that you are. And I think this is an amazing. It's a blessing that we can do this. I really am very grateful for you guys, for coming to be able to tell your story, our story, to our people and to the world in the manner that you did.
Thank you, Aman. Again, going back, I think the one good thing that comes out of this book, hopefully, is that first off, the idea of you guys, the kids, learning about what we've gone through in a way that is, relatable, because it's not a history book, correct? Although I talk a lot about Eritrea, what we've gone through, it is presented in a way that you can relate to, because it is an individual story. And those are usually more impactful than handing you a history book and expecting you to learn it or to read about Eritrea. This book kind of talks about the generational gap that we have, how you bridge it, what we've gone through, but at the same time also educate, especially a lot of people that do not know much about Eritrea, as well as Eritreans who are born here, about the story of Eritrea in a way that doesn't that you allows you to relate, correct? It is really a human being, so it's an individual story within a much larger context. But what you get out of it, and I heard this from Khalil, was he actually read my book, but he learned so much about Eritrea and its struggle. So that made me actually feel great, because indirectly it is not just about our generational fight or our generational survival. It is also a little bit about the history of Eritrea in a way that is easy to read and easy to understand. So from that perspective, I feel very happy. And Aman, you've done an amazing job of pulling this community together, defending this community, defending Eritrea. And if we can contribute in any way, and if this is contributing to your goal, I am super happy and blessed.
Just transitioning to the end, can you tell us what's next in terms of your projects and what you would like to do? And and if you ever consider making this into some kind of a script.
Well, it's funny that you said that, because you know this yourself, Aman. Publishing a book, you could do it in many ways, correct? And self-publishing allows you to retain the IP or the content, and the copyright of your of your content. So you can potentially, if this can turn out to be a story that is going to be told in a big way, then it is ours, correct? It is really our story, and not some publishing company that is going to benefit from it. But more importantly, honestly, I think the next step for me is I wrote this book not in any way to make money, correct? It's not about money. It's not about generating income out of this book. It is really about spreading the word, spreading the news, spreading our story to be told in a way that people can relate to. And I am at a point where I'm trying to find ways to push it as much as I can, potentially get an e-version of it, electronic version of it, and even an audio version of it. Those are the things that I'm kind of looking forward to work on. There has to be a project that keeps us all busy. So hopefully that will be coming soon. But again, much appreciated your help here, Aman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I add? Because I think, a huge element, clearly our family loves projects, but a huge element of what I think we are finding intriguing now is how can we have more conversations across generations and across these huge divides? How do we encourage storytelling when it's not as easy as it may have been for our dad, right? Because for our mom, she's a completely different person, and so I think, at least from the sisterhood side of things, and probably from the family side of things, we want to be able to help Eritreans get better at telling our stories, at talking about the difficult things, whether that's mental health or whether that's, racism, whatever the case is. It's something that I think we grow so much by learning to be open with each other and building these relationships. So, when we find time, once we settle down, I think that'll be something that comes up for us.
It'll be a great project for sure.
Yeah.
You got the commitment right there, Aman.
That is really very good. I'm very grateful for that. What about the Eriam Sisters? Any kind of work in that direction?
We haven't recently, but music is, I think, close to all of our hearts, and doing it together has always been, I think, has brought us insane amounts of joy. So I think we'll probably, you'll see some things.
I'm
for
sure. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think like a perfect example being we went to Kenya about a year ago, and we just happened to say, we heard about this cafe where you're able to just pick up a mic and do your thing, and we at the last minute decided to just go and perform a couple of songs. So I think, like Haben mentioned, it'll always be something that we do. I don't think it'll ever be anything that is fully.
Yeah.
What was the reaction like, and what did you?
It was good. I mean, they were great songs, so it's songs that people know, and so the vibe of the space was so beautiful and positive. So it was
good, and it had been a while since we'd performed together, so I think it was a great feeling for us, a very comfortable and feels like home. So
yeah, and I think at this stage right now we are living vicariously through Haben. She is, she's moved to LA. She's pursuing her career, spending 100% of her energy and time pursuing what she loves and what she's passionate about. And we are here for whatever she needs. She's fully aware of this, to support in, whether it's chauffeuring, picking out clothes, whatever it is, we are here for it. So
yeah, I'm a lucky girl.
She's a lead now.
Yeah, absolutely.
She is, and her newest project, The End, is out on all platforms. So you can listen to her music if we're talking about projects. And I wanted to shout out the Eritrean community in Nairobi, which somehow at the we didn't announce it, we didn't communicate, but somehow they still managed to show up, and it's amazing to have that moment and to connect with Eritreans also in Nairobi. So
yes.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was incredible. It's really amazing. First of all, thank you for writing this book. This is an incredible book, and I also congratulate you and congratulate you all. Sorry, Tablet was not here today, and your dad, but we think about her. I'm thinking about her, and so hopefully one day we will have the entire family. But I thank you very much for this. Who want to know more about what we did? I did a book review on this. The book is the 11-year-old man. Extremely well written, very historic, and I think every Eritrean should read it. And the review is going to be able to tell you kind of what the book is all about, and I will also attach a link so you can purchase it directly from there. It's my newsletter is called nefasitpost.com. So please read it and make sure to buy it and let everybody know to buy the book. It's a historic account of a person that tells an incredible story. Thank you very much, Mulugheta. I'm going to go from the bottom up now. Haben, Salina, and Lianda.
Guys, we'll pass on.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us, and best of luck, and we'll do all we can to support your projects as well, Amalia. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Arium! 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 September.